Thanks for staying here, staying until the last talk. Looking forward for the Web3 Summit, actually. I hope the swag is going to be as nice as last year's. This is actually the swag that I'm wearing most of the time, so good job on that. My name is Lea. I work for Centrifuge, and we're building an open protocol for the financial supply chain. We're actually parity neighbors, so we're also located at Glogaustrasse 6 at the second floor, so if you're ever there, feel free to stop by. We love visitors. I am responsible for product partnerships, and with a team of 16 people, that means a little bit of everything, but mostly I work with the product team and sort of in business development, and I talk to the people who are actually supposed to use our protocol. And I actually want to start with a few words on our mission. So at Centrifuge, everything that we do is geared towards building a platform where we can substantially improve the access to sustainable financing and liquidity for any type of business. And with any type of business, I mean, disregardless of the location where you're based or regardless of the size of your company. And to understand that, I've always found it useful to get a little bit of backstory where our founding team is coming from. And our founding team, they have actually been working together over 20 years before. They have built a startup before, a company named Taulia, which is actually now one of the biggest players still in supplier financing. And what they do is they help businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, to get paid earlier, so extend payments earlier so that they don't have to wait 2 to 3 to 4, 5 months to actually get paid. And why is that important? Our CEO actually said, so the nirvana, and I found this a really great sentence, the nirvana of B2B is actually getting paid on time. So the global average for any type of business is 59 days that they have to wait until they actually get paid. So when I invoice someone, I have to wait on average 59, 60 days to get paid, and that's only the global average. So if you are a smaller company or smaller supplier, I mean, Amazon is notoriously known to pushing down the burden to smaller suppliers, or if you're based in a low-income country, it can extend to 120 days. But in the meantime, you have to pay for stuff. You have to pay your people, you have to pay your staff, you have to pay for your services, or you have to pay tax, etc. So this is getting really expensive. And there are actually already companies out there that are tackling this. And they, as I said earlier, they extend early payments to these companies. But at the moment, only actually 2% on average is being serviced, and oftentimes it only goes down to like maximum second tier, and a supply chain can go up to 40 tiers. So we think the system is really flawed, and there's potential that can be leveraged. And what we set out to do is that we want to create a new generation B2B platform for new types of financial services. So a platform or a network where you're actually not depending on any intermediaries, where nobody's sitting on your data and can decide or is deciding who can access and who cannot. Financial applications that are accessible to any type of business and can be provided by anyone. So anyone can join. It's an open network. And we're also working towards mapping a global business graph. And what we provide, or like the building blocks that we provide for this type of new financial system at Centrifuge, is that we basically allow any business to exchange their financial documents in a private and secure yet verifiable way. And this allows any stakeholder involved to operate on unalterable single source of truth at any given point in time, And one of our core features is, okay, so we allow this exchange of financial documents, and we also support tokenizing these documents, and which then helps you to access DeFi, decentralized finance, or in general financing. And I'm gonna walk you through how Centrifuge works today. So I said we're coming from this invoice financing space, so the example that I give is based on the financial document and invoice, but in general we support different types of documents, warehouse receipts, royalty payments, etc. So we have, so in the supply chain there are obviously companies that interact with each other. So in this case we have Laces Inc. and we have Shoe Inc. and they do business together. At some point, Laces Inc., they want to get paid, so they send the invoice through our peer-to-peer network. So we have Centrifuge nodes. These nodes, they exchange the invoice. The invoice, or it has an attached signature. On the other hand, Shoes Inc., they also attach their signature. It then becomes, basically an immutable verifiable document. We have a two-layered approach. So we have this peer-to-peer network that's all happening. So the document exchange is happening off-chain. And then we rely on the public Ethereum blockchain for a couple of things. So one is NFTs, as I said. We allow any company to tokenize their documents. We have identities, Centrifuge identities, and anchors. And what we do with that, I will explain in a second. So, as said, Laces Inc. invoices Shoe Inc. The Centrifuge node looks up. So the identities can be used to uniquely identify each other on the peer-to-peer network. So Laces looks up shoes. Shoes can also verify keys, they can verify each other. Then whenever the document is exchanged, so as I said, the exchange is happening off-chain, but the document actually gets hashed, and the root hash is anchored on Ethereum. So this basically allows to create a fingerprint of a document and allows the different companies to operate on a single source of truth. And once this is done, Laces Inc. can tokenize that invoice, and we are following the ERC 721 standard, and basically this makes the document tradable, assignable, you can transfer ownership, etc. What you can also do is you can grant access or permissioned access to any other type of network or platform or any type of other business, which is an important thing because this allows you to interact with different players without, for example, to access financing, but you're not locked into one singular monetary system. And this is an interesting thing. So this is what we have been building the last year. And if you know the DeFi space, or if you have looked at what the DeFi space is about, mostly for somebody who wants to access financing or wants to borrow, mostly it is based on, so you lock up any other cryptocurrency, you lock in ETH, etc., and then you lend against that. But there is actually not so much happening with non-fungible assets or real-world assets, and because of that, we built an application in the last few months to turn this NFT desert of DeFi into an oasis for non-fungible assets. So the last few months we have been working on Tinlake, and Tinlake is actually, it bridges this gap of bringing these real-world assets on-chain and then access lending protocols such as Maker or Compound, etc., that most of them use the ERC 20 standard as of now. So Tinlake is a set of smart contracts, and this basically allows you to lock in any asset or any non-fungible asset that can be represented as an NFT following the ERC 721 standard, to pull that in a smart contract, and the smart contract then mints ERC20 tokens in exchange for locking this in. And the ERC20 tokens then represent a fraction of the underlying collateral, and having then these ERC20s can then grants you access to, for example, Maker, Compound, etc. And this then allows you to draw, in this case, if you want to look at Maker, this allows you to draw DAI in exchange. If you have any questions, let me know. Yeah, sure.
You just said you use those. Does that assume multi-collateral DAI, or how did you mean that? Sorry.
Yeah, you want to repeat?
You said you can use the minted ERC20 tokens that represent a fraction of the NFT.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment there's only single collateral DAI. So, but we're collaborating with them together to, like, when there is multi-collateral DAI, that any type of asset that represents in real-world assets can be voted in and can be used in multi-collateral DAI. Yeah.
Okay, and I have one more question. So normally with the collateralization, you have on-chain assets, right? So it's kind of given that you can claim these assets in an event. Here we're talking about like invoices in the real world, right? So it's like a payment made, bank transfer, for example. So how would you claim the underlying assets? Would you have to call the company and make sure it's...
Yeah. I mean, there has to be a risk assessment in place. I mean, for example, if you look at single collateral DAI, I mean, there is this whole governance structure to that sets the collateralization ratio of 150% and et cetera, all the other risk parameters. That will also have to happen per asset. So there is sort of, if you want to call an underwriter or somebody that assesses the credit risk. And if you look, for example, if you look at invoices, it's actually a fairly involatile asset. So it's actually, if you can, for example, verify the supplier and the buyer. So, for example, if you use Centrifuge NFTs, for example, and both parties have signed, you can make it easier to verify the different parties involved. So risk gets substantially lower, for example. But in this, the first applications, like the first deployments, where you set it out to be, there is sort of an operating team that manages the collateral pool. So make sure if there's a default of a certain type of asset, that it gets balanced, or in a worst case, it would have to be collected in real life.
Okay, so for example, I have one of these tokens, the underlying asset is gone, there's a default counterparty risk. And am I being repaid by the Centrifuge organization in that case?
Not by the, I mean, we're providing the infrastructure. You would have to be compensated by those operating the Tinlake deployment. And that could be any type of platform. That could be any type of asset origination platform. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. I'm happy to take more questions on that later on. Just a few words about where we are right now at Centrifuge. So we're live on Ethereum mainnet. We have invoices financed already. We're working with different companies with different platforms that either host their own node or run their own node or deploy hosted nodes. We will have Tinlake production transaction finalized mid-August. And we're currently building our Centrifuge chain, and we'll be using Substrate, because the deployment, how everything is deployed right now, that's great if you have a few invoices, but if you're working with bigger companies such as BASF that have, I don't even, like, several different suppliers sending invoices in and out every day, then it's just Ethereum, like having everything on Ethereum, and it will be a little bit too expensive. So actually we have one of our engineers here, there's Wim. He is mainly working on building the Centrifuge chain, so if you have any questions there, feel free to reach out. And if you don't have any questions, then that's it.
Any questions in the room?
So how much of the debt can you get from this system? Like invoice is like a debt, right? So you get like a small amount of that.
Yeah, that very much depends on the asset type that you have. For example, on average, or like in the traditional invoice financing right now, you can usually get like 80 to 90% of your invoice finance. So, I mean, Tinlake is set up in a modular way, so you don't only have to use Maker, but I mean, if you look at Compound, for example, the collateralization ratio there, I believe, is also 150%, more or less. And this is also due to the fact that the assets that you lock in are volatile to sort of counterbalance that. Depending on the underlying asset that you have, Does it work? Yeah, cool. You can then have a different, like a slower, not a slower, a lower collateralization ratio to be actually competitive to what's already out there. Yeah. Any other question? Yep. Should I?
Just repeat the question.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
How have you seen adoption with the platform equipment? Because, like, I talked to a couple of VC companies about building the same thing in different countries, but the problem is always the local currency in said country, and also the people issuing the invoice have to be stakeholders within the platform.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm roughly paraphrasing the question. So you were asking about adoption and what the different difficulties or like hurdles are depending on like the local currencies that you have or where the invoice is issued. That is definitely a hurdle. So I mean, if you are just looking at, for example, I mean, if you're a company and you want to have early payment, you are probably not gonna get your financing in Ether or Bitcoin. You want a stable coin that is just less volatile. Most of the dominating stablecoins are pegged to the US dollar. If you are a business in the Eurozone, you have Forex even just there. So you have to switch to from euro to dollar, from dollar to DAI, USDC, whatever you want to use. So there are accruing fees that you actually don't necessarily want to have. That is an issue still, and that really depends on like where you start. So we have different MVPs with companies that are based in the US. There maybe it's not so much of an issue. Europe it is, but we're positive on the ecosystem to evolve and that it will be less of an issue. Yeah. You have enough?
Is the main goal basically to make these invoices globally tradable very easily? Like to create a big market for it, or is that the main goal? Or?
Okay, so the question was if the main goal is to make invoices globally tradable. I would say that the main goal is to bring illiquid assets on-chain. So that can be invoices, but can also be warehouse receipts, etc. So different types of financial documents, and basically to access a global financial system that is not where there are no intermediaries that tell you if you can have credit, if a credit line, if you are based in a low-income country. So yeah, that's the goal. Okay, I'm gonna be around for some time, so if you have any questions left, then let me know or come by our office. Cool, thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lea. It's really great.